Hey guys, this is Bl00dyBizkitz, and this is my speedrun of Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep Final Mix for the PS3. This game was originally released for the PSP, but was since then re-released for the PS3, part of Kingdom Hearts 2.5 HD Remix, and that gives it faster loading times, as well as a incredibly busted mechanic in the ability EXP0, which I'll be explaining later on. I'm playing on the hardest difficulty as well as the fastest difficulty, level 1 critical mode, and I'm choosing the character story Aqua. You can choose between 3 characters, as you will see here in a second. Aqua is by far the fastest, so that's why I pick her. So there's a funny story for why level 1 happens to be the fastest difficulty in this game. When this game was originally released for the PSP, level 1 critical mode was incredibly tedious. Your damage output was just really crap, and you had to use cheese enemies and bosses with commands such as Ignite and other really tedious strategies. So when they re-released it for the PS3, they decided to remake it so that your damage output was a little bit better. And they did that, but they also made some mechanics and some finishers and such incredibly broken, which you'll see later on in the run. This part is referred to as orbs, and this is probably the most luck-dependent part of the run. So this is kind of the tutorial section, where the game story has you defeat like training orbs. These guys move around really quickly. They actually outspeed your combos, so it's incredibly difficult to hit these guys, and your damage output is pretty crap at this point, and you don't really have any good commands, making this incredibly luck dependent, so you have to rely a lot on Terra and Vin to help you out during this section. And right there you also have to rely on the orbs bunching up like that, so I was able to kill 4 in one go. So those are pretty good orbs. As you can see in the top right, I learned what's called Spellweaver, which is a command style. The way that the battle system works in this game is that when you have a meter in the, I think at the bottom left, you have a meter that fills up when you use combos and commands. And when the meter fills up, you either get a standard finisher, which at that point, that was the only thing I had, so I just was able to use finish. And you also gain access to command styles, which is what I got access to right there with Spellweaver. Depending on what commands you used to fill up the gauge, you will determines what command style you get. And Spellweaver is incredibly broken with EXP0. For whatever reason, the game developers highly overlooked the damage output of Spellweaver when used with their like newly recreated level 1. So basically, we do bars and bars and bars of damage on bosses, when normally, even on like beginner mode, we're supposed to be doing far less damage. So you'll be seeing that once we get to the first enemies in the first boss. Right here we move over to the left to get this Fleeting Crystal. Fleeting Crystals are used with the meld system in this game. We can meld or put commands together along with a crystal to get a stronger command, as well as abilities. Fleeting Crystals will give us access to Magic Haste, which lets us reload magic commands faster, which is really important. You'll also notice that I'm cartwheeling around everywhere. Cartwheeling is the fastest form of movement in this game, besides using Sliding Dash. We'll be buying a Sliding Dash later, and you'll be seeing some neat movement tech as we go along. Cartwheel also has to be timed. I cannot mash the square button to get perfect cartwheels. If you mash the square button, then Aqua will actually like stand up for half a second before going into her next cartwheel. So to go as fast as possible, you have to time the cartwheels perfectly. It's also really incredibly difficult to control the direction of your cartwheels. For some reason, they made it incredibly sensitive on the analog stick where you cartwheel. As you saw there, I picked up a couple of chests, Barrier Surge and High Potion. We're going to be selling those along with a couple of other commands to get some other commands that we want right now. For now, I'm just going to be cartwheeling through this section. Since I'm level 1, I don't really have to grind anywhere at all. I get to stay level 1 and still go like even faster than normal critical mode or even beginner mode. So right here I sell Barrier Surge, Quick Blitz, and High Potion, and then I buy a Sliding Dash, 2 Blizzards, and Sleep. The Sleep will be for later, but I need the Blizzards because that'll make it easier for me to get into Spellweaver Finisher, or just Spellweaver in general. And they also do a pretty decent amount of damage. We're also going to be melding those Blizzards later. And of course I also turn on EXP 0. So this next fight is also pretty luck reliant. It's called the Jacques Escort. It's where we have to guide Jacques across this room to his mouse hole. There are multiple different paths that Jacques can take. All of them except for one have enemies included in them that you have to get rid of so that he can continue along his path. Only one of them has Jacques go straight to the end to his mouse hole without encountering a single other enemy. So what I have to do right here is I have to get these front 2 enemies in front of me out of the way to get Jacques moving. So right there, I just kind of move these enemies out of the way, and then Jacques just takes off running. Very luckily and fortunate for me, he takes the perfect path all the way to the end, and that's the perfect fight right there. A lot of the time you have to, I actually have a safety strat just in case he runs into other enemies, so that I don't really have to worry about them, where I abuse Spellweaver Finisher to get rid of enemies extremely quickly, but Jacques was incredibly nice and I had the perfect fight right there. So next up we have the first boss of the run, which is the Cursed Coach, where I'm going to be wanting to go into Spellweaver Finisher as quickly as possible, so I'll explain that as soon as we get there. So the secret behind Cursed Coach is he moves around exactly 4 times, or he goes through 4 different movement animations before he decides to attack you. So the goal is to get into Spellweaver by that point, and then kind of react to what he does at that point, and that kind of determines the rest of the fight. So right here, I have Thunder pre-ready because Thunder isn't a good projectile, so I have to get up and close to him. So I use it right here to make sure that it lands. Then I make sure that these Blizzards land. Right there, I think he's moved 3 times, if I'm looking at it correctly, and then that's his 4th movement. Fortunate for me, I'm actually able to get off a combo finisher on this guy, which actually stuns him. And then I stun him again, use a couple of Blizzards, and he's right at the perfect amount of HP for me to use Spellweaver Finisher. As you can see, Spellweaver Finisher just decimates this guy's HP. And that's the perfect fight. Or a close to perfect fight right there. A lot of the times, Cursed Coach can either bounce around. He can charge you, or he can hit you out of your combo. But that time I was actually able to get in the combo finisher before he was able to do anything else. So that created for an incredibly fast fight. So now I get to choose between either Enchanted Dominion or Dwarf Woodlands. I choose Dwarf Woodlands because Enchanted Dominion has goons, which are incredibly difficult without a spell Magnet, which I'm pretty sure you don't have access to right now. And we also don't really have the money for it either, if it were there. So we're going to go to Dwarf Woodlands because there's a command here that gives us a lot of money, which we will then use to sell and get those magnets that we need to make Enchanted Dominion very fast. I'd also like to mention that there are no gummy missions or auto-scrollers in this run. There's only one part of the run that drags on. It's a 3-minute game that you have to do in Disney Town, but other than that, there's really not much downtime except for the cutscene loading. Other than that, you're moving around pretty quickly. So right here, you're going to be seeing some sliding dash tech. As you saw earlier, it's a little bit faster than just cartwheeling, but if you use sliding dash and hit enemies, you can do what's called an action roll right here. You get to roll out of the animation without having any lag, so you do that whenever possible. Right here in this room, what's really important is I have to get into Spellweaver Finisher extremely quickly, So I spawn all of these enemies and line them all up like that, so that I have Spellweaver Finisher already loaded. And then I go into this corner and I use it on these enemies called Prize Pods. They drop these items called Ice Cream Ingredients, which will be used to create an endgame item called Fabricadabra. I'll explain that later. But I need something that gives me a lot of hits, or deals a lot of hits, and Spellweaver Finisher does the trick perfectly. Right here, you can jump on this archway and then use Sliding Dash to get across this gap and get to Fission Fire. You're not really supposed to be able to get up here this early. I'm pretty sure the developers intended you to have either high jump or double flight to be able to get up there, but by doing that precise movement, you're able to get Fission Fire early. And Fission Fire is what we're going to be selling a little bit later to get the magnets that we need. It also does quite a bit of damage, so I'm going to be equipping it now. I'm also equipping Sleep. I have my deck preset for this insane strat that we're going to do to the boss in this world, so you'll be seeing that in just a little bit. Right now what we're doing is we're doing movement to get to another Fleeting Crystal. There are not many Fleeting Crystal chests in this route, so we pick them up when we can. We only get access to 4. You're able to have 5 magic hastes, but we only get 4 fleetings. So the last fleeting is completely dependent on drops. It's not really a big deal if you don't get the last drop. It really doesn't save that much time, but getting 4 fleetings is incredibly necessary. So we get all of the ones that are guaranteed in the route. So I have Sleep preset so that I go into this fight ready to fight the Spirit of the Magic Mirror. So basically I have Sleep for this boss to keep him down so that I can use attacks on him while he's asleep and it won't add to his hit counter. He has this hit counter going where after a certain amount of hits he will actually fall down and then get up and then teleport away. But for some weird reason, Sleep kind of modifies his hit counter. He's supposed to take supposedly 8 hits and then teleport away or get knocked down. But for some reason, Sleep and the way that I use these combos or these commands on him make it so his hit counter is like maybe refreshed or extended. It's not exactly explained, but it sets it up in a way so that I get Spellweaver Finisher, and then I'm able to knock him down, and while he's in this knockdown phase, use Spellweaver Finisher and kill him before he's able to do any moves whatsoever. This is, I guess you'd call it the quote-unquote perfect fight. You could potentially get a faster fight using normal strats such as Blizzard and Poison, but that would rely on luck, because you'd have to rely on him giving you the perfect move afterwards. With a lot of these cutscenes, you can actually skip them like immediately on fade in. So sometimes you can skip these cutscenes like with a when the screen is completely white or completely black. On games such as Kingdom Hearts 2, there's actually a bit of delay before a cutscene becomes skippable. But in Birth by Sleep, for whatever reason, they don't really have a delay. It's just as soon as the heart is done spinning, like practically the frame after the heart in the bottom right is done spinning, the cutscene becomes skippable. So what I do is I kind of buffer cutscene skips. I just kind of put the action or put the inputs into my controller until the cutscene actually does activate, and sometimes I get lucky and I skip it like on the perfect frame, and sometimes I just skip it normally based on reaction. So now we're going to be headed to Enchanted Dominion. Right here, Sliding Dash is on cooldown because it was the last command that I used, so I have to wait to use it. I could use it right now, but I think there is actually a faster way to use it up here in this area. I save it for when there are enemies in front of me so that I can do the action roll, or action cartwheel, whatever you want to call it. It's a little bit faster than waiting for the delay or using it immediately, since you can only use it once before going into this area. And in this area, we're going to be editing the command deck. And when you edit the command deck, all commands turn into, or become cooldown. So, you wouldn't be able to use sliding dash in that case. So that was a pretty quick cutscene skip, as I was mentioning earlier. I just kind of buffer the input until it becomes active. So right here now we're going to go to the Moogle and sell some stuff. I sell the Fission Fire Auga, a Blizzard, and a Sleep, since those are a little bit unnecessary. And then I pick up 4 fires and 4 magnets. You don't have to buy 4 magnets, you only really have to buy 3, but I buy an extra one to keep the Thunder command for later. And then we're going to be going up here, and we're going to be doing this interesting little movement. It's kind of the same way that we got Fission Fire Auga. The game didn't really intend for you to get it until maybe a little bit later when you had Air Slide. But right here, if you use Slide Dash on the staircase at a very specific point, you can get up to this ledge and get Ice Barrage, which is an incredibly useful command, which you're going to be using throughout the rest of the run. Ice Barrage creates these gigantic icicles, which do a lot of damage. I'm also pretty sure they do more damage on level 1 than they do on other difficulties. So I'm assuming that was part of the EXP 0 like rebalancing. They decided to give it a little bit more damage, so it becomes very useful. For these goons fights, these guys, the story behind these guys is they will usually sit around and wait for a couple of seconds, and then they will all decide to attack at once. So the idea is to get to these guys before that actually happens, or as they're coming towards you, because goons are incredibly dangerous. They can 3-shot you extremely easy. So I just use magnets to keep the guys immobilized while I build up Spellweaver Finisher. And then, once I have it, I just unleash it on the last few guys, and that just kills them. There I use Sliding Dash, obviously, for a little bit faster movement. And now we're going to be headed to Goons 2, which is really an extended version of the fight that I did before. Basically, we need to escape the castle, and we need to clear out all of the ground enemies before we get a reaction command from Prince Philip, which will allow us up to the higher area, which has a little wheel, if you can see there in the back. If you hit the wheel, then it'll open the gate, and you need to hit 2 gates to be able to get out of here. So the strat here actually involves dealing with the enemies that are on the, I guess, rampart, or the higher area. It helps build up meter a little bit to get to Spellweaver a little bit quicker, and it also makes it a lot safer, because the snipers can really do a lot of cheap shotting on you, so it's preferred to kind of take them out. And right there I have a Spellweaver Finisher ready to go so that I can unleash it on the guys as they spawn, and it just kind of blows them up. So really all you have to do is use the reaction command to make the top part accessible. Right there you saw that I just sliding dashed up there. And the reason why I didn't do it earlier is because there's actually an invisible wall that is set up there until you use that reaction command, which is unfortunate, but that's just the way that the game developers made it. So we're past the first gate, and then we use just continue to use magnet on these guys as we go along. That magnet there is just to build up a little bit of meter and keep those guys immobilized. And now I have meter all ready to go, so I can Spellweaver Finisher through all of these spawning enemies. Now I had a little bit low of EXP right here. Normally, I'm actually able to have all of my commands leveled up to level 2 by this point, which is important for reasons which I'll explain a little bit later. But I could tell by the way that Thunder had leveled up that I'm pretty sure that I wouldn't make it to level 2 for all of my commands. So I decided to take it a little bit safe and just rely on these bruisers to kill, since these guys will give you a lot of what's called CP, or command points. The commands themselves level up on their own via enemies, but with the EXP 0 ability, Aqua herself does not actually level up. She stays at level 1. Now, the reason that the commands need to be leveled up is once they hit a certain level, then you will be able to meld them, which I explained earlier. You'll be able to meld them together to create stronger commands. So for base stuff such as magnet and fire, etc., all they need to be is at level 2 for them to be able to meld. So that's why that's important. So right here before the boss in this little save area, I'm going to go ahead and meld my commands together really quickly. All of the melding is routed out so that I get my magic hastes and other specific abilities that I need when I need them. So right here I get Magnera, well, 2 Magneras and a Bl00dy, each with magic haste. And then I'm going to refashion my deck with Ice Barrage and 1 Bl00dy, 2 Fyras, and the 2 Magneras, which will give me 3 magic hastes, so that I can basically spam my magic commands as quickly as possible on this next boss. I also equipped High Jump, since that was in the same menu. So the idea for this fight is that all of her attacks are, all of their hitboxes are in front of her. So like stuff such as her Stomp and her Chomp and her Fire, all of the hitboxes are in front of her, but the game allows you to get like behind her, and I don't even have to target. As long as you just hit her, you don't even really have to hit her head, then she is vulnerable. So I just sit back here where I'm safe, and I just spam the commands behind her. And you can't really tell because the HP isn't displayed, but her Spellweaver finisher does an insane amount of damage to her. So as you can see, I just kind of blow through the boss. So that's it for the first 3 worlds, which allows us access to Radiant Garden. This is a really, really good first half of the run. This is probably like the best that I had. It was really carried by the Jacques Escort earlier. That was probably the huge time saver that I really needed, but this was a really, really fast opening of the game. I also would like to mention that a lot of the speedrun comes down to micromanagement of your command deck. For example, in the Dragon Maleficent fight, it obviously looked like I was just kind of spamming my commands as I was going along, but it's actually, the strat is laid out so that you use the minimal amount of commands needed to fill up the command gauge so that you get a Spellweaver finisher. If you just spammed, then you'd probably spam a lot of unnecessary commands, which would make the fight a little bit slower, maybe by a few seconds, but it's just a little bit of, the little time savers come down a lot to deck micromanagement. So as we go along, you'll see that the movement gets a little bit more technical as we go along. Like the areas get kind of bigger and there's a lot more vertical movement that we have to do. Like for here, for example, the idea is to jump on these little side railings and stay on them for as long as possible. If you can cartwheel on them the entire time, unfortunately I wasn't really able to there, but if you can cartwheel on them the entire time, then you have extremely optimal movement. There's the 3rd Fleeting Crystal, I believe, that we've get at this point. And now we just move on into the Mickey fight. So a really important thing to mention is that when you have allies in your party, or allies for certain fights, any enemies that those allies kill, those do not count towards the command points that you get. So say Mickey here, if Mickey were to kill like too many enemies, then the fires that I have in my command deck would not reach level 2 in time, and I wouldn't be able to meld them together to get a magic haste, which is incredibly important, and I don't want that to happen. So I kind of designed my strats to avoid that from happening. So right here, all I have to do is kill the little purple floods, which will spawn the hawks and that tank toppler. And then I use Spellweaver finisher when they dive at me to kill them. The hawks can be incredibly annoying if they don't dive straight at you. I'm pretty sure they're lured in by the drops that I have next to my feet, so Thankfully, they dive straight towards me, and I'm able to kill them really quickly with Spellweaver Finisher. Right here, we cartwheel back to get this chest that has Mind Square. Mind Square is a casual fan favorite. We pick it up because we're going to sell it later, and it sells for quite a bit of money. And it also fills up the meter really, really quickly, as well as doing pretty decent damage. It also has another little aspect of it, which I will explain later, but that'll become important after this upcoming fight, which is Trinity Armor. I also melded together the two fires to get Fyra and a Magic Haste. So that gives me 4 Magic Hastes, which is really important for Trinity Armor, since I'm going to be needing to... I'm going to need to use a lot of commands to fill up my meter, and the more Magic Hastes, the faster the reloading. So in this fight, you also get Terra and Vin as allies, kind of similarly to at the start of the game. They also do pretty decent damage on their own, so they help as... and not only that, Trinity Armor also kind of targets other enemies towards the very start. So right here, Trinity Armor will shoot a fireball and then charge 3 times. The 2 charges at the end will be directed towards Terra, so I kind of maneuver in a way to avoid those charges. So I Ice Barrage the legs right here to fill up my gauge to full. Unfortunately, the Mind Square there was supposed to fill it up by more and get me to Spellweaver instantly, but I wasn't able to do that, so I had to guard and use an extra Fyra to get to the finisher. And then right here, I use commands really quickly to break the leg and be in Spellweaver finisher, so that I can break the arms. If you do it that way, then you'll skip this really long animation where they go to each end of the arena to create this kind of laser. So that just leaves the head, and thankfully you can just stand under the head and spam commands until you get to Spellweaver finisher, and then kill him just like that. It was a slightly slow fight simply because the Mind Square didn't give me enough gauge at the start, but other than that, it was it went perfectly fine. So the idea there was just to kind of get to 3 Spellweaver finishers, which would break each individual part. So another really important part is that we got a new command style finisher, Blade Charge. Blade Charge is actually a tier 2 command finisher, which means that tier 2 is a tier 2 finisher, command style finisher. I'm not explaining this well. A tier 2 command style is a result. You can only transform into that when you're in a command, or when you're in a tier 1 command style finisher. So that means that when we're in Spellweaver, the attacks that we do while we're in Spellweaver could end up resulting in us turning into Blade Charge. And Blade Charge is kind of cool and all, but Spellweaver does way more damage, and is kind of what we want. So we want to avoid Blade Charge at all costs, which means that the commands that we use specifically, they have, when we're in Spellweaver, the commands that we use have to avoid being like elemental, so we cannot use stuff like Blazara and Fyra and such when we're in Spellweaver. But once we hit Spellweaver finisher, we'll be safe to use other types of commands. So you'll see that in this fight right here, Vanitas 1. So the game developers thought it would be cool to create a boss that basically teleports out of any move that you throw at him. So the magnet that we throw up right here is kind of RNG, whether or not he gets caught in it. But he gets caught in it the first time. And a lot of casual players will probably find this incredibly hilarious to see Vanitas 1 caught in Magnet, because they never, I don't think they probably thought of using Magnet. They probably didn't think he was weak to it. But right here, as you can see, I'm in Spellweaver, and I'm only using Magnet in physical hits. so that I don't turn into Blade Charge. Now that I've hit the finisher, I can use any command that I want. As you can see, I'm using Fire and Blazara and such. And I keep on using these magnets to keep him looped in the magnet while I continue to do damage to him. And I keep him like this until he's at the correct amount of HP where I can Spellweaver Finisher him to death. So right now is the perfect amount of HP. And all he has to do is be in a fresh magnet and he'll be done. Or Magnera. So that ends Radiant Garden, and that kind of transitions into the, I guess, second half of the run, where we will be able to access a new set of worlds. The first set was Castle of Dreams, Dwarf Woodlands, and Enchanted Dominion. Now we have access to Disney Town, Deep Space, and Olympus Coliseum. Now we're going to be doing a little bit differently. We're going to be doing it a little bit differently with these worlds, because in the other worlds we just went to each world individually, beat it, and then went to the next one. In this case, we have access to all three, so we're actually going to be kind of hopping around and not finishing each of these worlds on the first visit, except for Disney Town, but you'll kind of see what I mean in a little bit. As I mentioned earlier, we are kind of on the hunt for ice cream ingredients. We got the first ones that we needed earlier, and we're going to be looking for more in Deep Space and Olympus Coliseum to create ice cream, which is kind of the ultimate end goal item that we'll be using to defeat the final bosses. So right here, this is where Thunder really comes in handy. Thunder actually, for some odd reason, isn't really elemental. So right here, you'll see me in Spellweaver use Thunder, and I end up with Spellweaver Finisher instead of Blade Charge. For some reason, whatever reason, it isn't elemental. So I'm able to use it and kind of quickly get to Spellweaver Finisher as well as quickly kill enemies. That was the entire purpose of me saving Thunder, was for this fight. The reason, well, I had an extra command deck slot open because I needed to throw in fire, and the only place that would fit would be over Ice Barrage. I needed to fit in 2 fires so that I can meld them together to create fire right here. That left me with an open slot, which I decided to use. I decided to save Thunder for it. Other runners would probably just have that open slot because they melded that Thunder together earlier, but I kept it just for this fight in particular. Now, right here, if I had another fleeting crystal, I would use it on that Fyra, but I've been keeping track of my drops, and I know for certain that I don't have an extra one. So, I could check for an extra pulsing, which would give me Leaf Bracer, but I decided not to. I decided to be as optimal as possible and just meld the two together. Oddly enough, when you just meld together 2 commands, just like that, without any crystal, there is a chance that you'll randomly get an ability attached to it, but that time I didn't really get it. So sometimes for really, if you're really, really lucky, you'll actually get that Magic Haste or Leaf Bracer without even using a crystal. So now we roll over to probably, well, the second most RNG dependent part of the run, and this is a huge run killer as well. We just refer to it as Deep Space minigame. Basically, when they designed this minigame, they decided not to give you like any breaks whatsoever when you're on your Keyblade glider, and there's a lot of lag behind like all of your moves, and these enemies can potentially combo you and rush you like 4 at once and kill you extremely quickly. So you have to kind of play a game of both. You have to be both cautious as well as optimal at the same time. So I stay on the edge of this ring right here, which puts me in range to spam the wing arrow move, which I think it's probably the most optimal way of killing these guys. And it also leaves me with barely any blind spot, so I can keep on checking from left to right to see if there are enemies that are charging me. Right there, I didn't see that enemy in time, so I got knocked away, but I quickly got out to shoot these guys more. As you saw right here, I didn't really get hit by enemies all that often. I only got hit by them like a couple of times, which is extremely fortunate. If you see other people run this game, they probably get decimated by this minigame a lot worse. This went, I would say, a little bit pretty optimally. It can go a lot faster, and there is a huge amount of potential time save here if things go well. But the potential risk, like this far into the run, is so great that a lot of people just decide to take it really safe. So right after that, we are thrown into this room, and we need to get access to a teleporter, but these enemies are here, so we need to kill them to be able to actually gain access to it. So right here, I actually jump into this little divot, and unfortunately, the enemies charged me. Thankfully, I didn't die. I was probably one hit away from death right there. But they kind of dispelled my magnet, so I had to wait until the other one recharged to use another one. So this was slightly unoptimal. It was a pretty good fight. Like, I kind of designed the strat to avoid dying, and so you'd be able to use that magnet and still finish the fight, but it having the magnet being dispelled as I was trying to cast it was kind of what made that a little bit unoptimal. And now we run into this fight, which has Stitch in it. Kind of similar to Mickey, you want to kill these enemies on your own so that you don't really lose CP. Stitch can either just hop around or shoot lasers, depending. You don't really have to worry about him since he doesn't really help that much. Unfortunately, this was kind of maybe one of the most unoptimal fights in the run. I wasn't really happy with it. The strat is designed to magnet these guys, get Spellweaver Finisher ready, and then catch these guys right here, these bots in the magnet, but unfortunately none of them got caught. They kind of spawn on the ends right there. So I had to chase this guy down, and he didn't really die at the appropriate time that I wanted him to. So that was probably the most unoptimal fight of the run. Well, maybe there are more unoptimal ones, but that one didn't go quite as well. I probably lost maybe at least 5, maybe 10 seconds, 10 probably being the max. But yeah. What I was supposed to do is I was supposed to, as I said, get into Spellweaver Finisher, kill those enemies, have the bots spawn into the magnet, and then kind of group them all together with magnet. And then I would be able to Spellweaver Finisher them all to death. So right here, what I'm doing is I'm kind of going outside of the natural route. What you're supposed to do in the story is go fight Gantu. But what I'm doing is I'm actually leaving through the world map to get to the Turo transporter area. It's faster to save warp that way. And what I need to do is I need to get to the prize pod enemies that drop ice cream. So I get to these guys, and the fastest way, I don't need to use Spellweaver Finisher on these guys. I mean, it would work, but it would be a little bit slow. You only really need a certain amounts of ice cream, or ice cream ingredients to create a certain amount of ice cream. I think what you want is at least 50, maybe lower than 40 is kind of pushing it, but if you're incredibly optimal with the route, you can go for, or shoot for much lower than that. So I probably could have been maybe a little bit riskier there and could have left a little bit earlier, but since we don't know exactly how many ingredients you need, and you can't really tell since there are a lot of other ingredients that you don't need that these guys drop, I decided to be safe and just kind of magnet, get into Spellweaver, magnet, hit them some more, and that would give you the appropriate amount. That'll get you to like around 60, maybe 70, which is perfectly safe. So now we're gonna hop over to Olympus Coliseum, and skip having to fight Gantu until later. What we're basically doing is we're waiting to get ice cream, and then we're gonna be using it on those guys, and you'll see what I mean in a little bit. So we're gonna do this forced fight. I try and kill these guys specifically so that I Spellweaver Finisher through these 2 waves. And that sets it up so that I can kill this wave back here and get into Spellweaver. I want these guys to die back here so that these enemies don't get caught in the magnet. These guys are really spread apart, so I have to kind of like double magnet to catch them all together. And then I just kind of clean up with Spellweaver. So, as you saw there, like, the strat is very well defined. Like, if you just kind of go get Spellweaver and then use Spellweaver immediately, like, you'll kill these guys somewhat optimally, but it will definitely not be as optimal as it could be. So right now, you can choose between either going to do the tournament rounds right now or getting the ice cream. I just decided to go for the ice cream. It's just personal preference. Or the ice cream ingredients, rather. And this is the last time that you need to quote-unquote farm. This is really the only farming in the run, or grinding, I guess. In other categories, even like KH2FM crit, you would have to level grind a little bit for like 2 minutes to reach an appropriate strength amount. But here, this is really the only grinding that you need to do, and it's a lot shorter. So now I just head straight into the tournament rounds. The strat here, you actually keep your Spellweaver Finisher, or all of your, you keep your health and like all of your effects, so that includes your command style. You keep it all throughout the entire tournament, so the idea here is get into Spellweaver Finisher as quickly as possible and then save it for round 10, and you'll see what I mean once we get there. Another thing that I kind of forgot to mention earlier is that Mind Square is also neutral, and it doesn't get you into, it doesn't force you into Blade Charge, so that's a huge reason why we keep Mind Square around. So now the rest of these rounds is basically going to be Magnera, Ice Barrage, or some form of that. If you had the extra magic haste, you would be able to go through this just a tad bit more optimally, because Ice Barrage would be able to reload faster. And as you can see, your commands are like actually reloading during these little introduction animations right here. Right there, that's round 6 is probably the scariest round out of all of them, simply because of the mandrakes there that shot at me. But if you get close enough, even if all 3 hit you, you will not die, so you can be pretty safe and just go straight for it. Right here, I was really worried that that enemy, he was preparing to do this orb move that I would have to guard, and it would require a little bit of extra time. But I guess I magneted him before he casted it, or before he cast it, so I guess you could call that, I got a little bit fortunate there. So now we're at round 10, and we have these guys. These guys, if I didn't have this, they'd probably be able to just combo me and kill me instantly. But this keeps me invulnerable and lets me move around and just kind of mow through them. And that's definitely the most optimal way to kill them. So now that we have all of the ice cream ingredients that we need, and the tournament rounds are over and we kind of have all the money we need, we're going to kind of set up for the end game right now, which means that we're going to leave Olympus Coliseum right now, and then we're going to head for Disney Town, because Disney Town is where we're going to be able to make our ice cream. Basically, there's this little station in Disney Town with Huey, Dewey, and Louie, where you get to trade in your ice cream ingredients, and they will give you ice cream as a reward if the ice cream ingredients like fulfill a recipe. So that's the reason why we go around these worlds in the way that we do. It's to collect ice cream ingredients and then end up here to get the ice cream. Now, I guess would be a good time to explain what the ice cream itself does. Basically, ice cream, the item itself will put you immediately into command styles without having to like fill up your meter or anything. It basically just fills up your meter instantly. And if you use a second ice cream, then it will immediately fill up your gauge and put you into the finisher. So Fabricadabra, which is the ice cream that you get as a result of that, 2 of those will get you into Spellweaver Finisher instantly, which is incredibly useful for bosses, and it's the most optimal way to kill them. So that's why we've been saving the bosses for last until we can get Fabricadabra, because that's the most optimal way to kill them. Now this right here is, this is called Fruit Ball, and this is the gummy mission, quote-unquote, of the run. This is your downtime. This takes 3 minutes to finish, which is extremely long. But thankfully, it does give you kind of something to do. You actually do have to beat these guys in order to like progress the plot and beat the world. So it does kind of give you something to do, and you can kind of like shoot for a high score. The world record as of the time that I'm recording this right now, which is March 25th, the world record is 42 score by the end of it. I think I reached a PB in this run. I think I got a score of 40. The strat that you would use, I guess, is to get the grapes and then press triangle triangle to break them all apart, which gives you the potential to score a lot of points really, really quickly. But yeah, this is the gummy mission, so this is kind of where you have to wait around. Once you reach a score of maybe around 20, you could probably like actually just sit around and not really have to do anything anymore. And it would kind of be like your break time to get water or go to the bathroom or whatever. It's a little bit better than the other stories. For Terra and Vin, their Disneytown minigames require you to be like actively involved the entire time. Terra's is the worst because it requires like it's the longest, or it is incredibly long, and it requires your full attention the entire time, so you don't really get to take a break during it. I think the ultimate like theoretical strat here would be right there for those little nets to spawn, and then for you to get the grape, and then you'd be able to smash the grape into the enemies, and it would bounce into the net and then back into their own goal. Another interesting thing to mention is that you actually have to set up your profile, your PlayStation profile, in a way that avoids cutscenes. You can actually avoid cutscenes in the run if you set up your profile correctly, which will save you like 20 seconds. Basically, what you do is you complete another character's story, either Terra or Ven's, and then avoid doing the other character's story, whichever one you didn't do. Avoid doing that character's story up until, I believe, Disneytown, and that will avoid 2 extra cutscenes. The extra cutscenes show or involve some kind of it's just plot development and kind of shows how Pete becomes partnered with Maleficent. So now we're back in Olympus Coliseum. And what we're doing right now is we're selling all of the unnecessary commands that we need, since we don't need to fight any more mobs of enemies anymore. We're just going to be fighting strictly bosses for the rest of the run. So we're selling all of unnecessary commands such as Mind Square, Magnet, Blizzard, and Ice Barrage, and we're buying a couple of cures and a Suna 5 ignites, and 2 and a block, I believe. Now right here I get Raging Storm, which would be a disaster in a beginner run. The reason why it's kind of annoying to get Raging Storm is that it takes up 2 slots, so I have 1 less slot to work with, but I'm still able to do the strats that I need. It's just kind of, it's an odd random chance that you get Raging Storm. It's not that bad though, because I get what I need from Raging Storm, which is once more. And, of course, I get second chance from creating Renewal Barrier by melding together Block and Asuna. So now we start the endgame fights, or bosses with Zack. This fight didn't go quite as well as I wanted it to. The most optimal way to do this fight is to ignite at the start, Fabricadabra, Fabricadabra, Spellweaver Finisher, repeat, and he would be dead. Unfortunately, what happened here is I didn't target, and he also rushed me at the start a little early, so I had to kind of wait. And here, I didn't have Ignite, like, ready to go to spam. If you don't have it ready to go, then you can get, like, just mauled by this guy. So I decided to Fabricadabra, Fabricadabra, Ignite instead, and waste the time, and just be incredibly safe about it. So I wasted a little bit of time, maybe like 3 to 4 seconds by doing it that way. A perfect fight would probably not even have to move from starting position if you were fast enough and lucky enough. And as you saw right there, you can see exactly why we get Fabricadabra. It gets you to one of the most broken mechanics in the game as quickly as possible to spam on bosses. So next up we have a more difficult boss, Hades and Ice Colossus. You actually have to, it's 2 bosses in one, and you have to defeat both. The annoying part here is, if you've watched other Kingdom Hearts speedruns, then you'll know that Hades can DM or use a desperation move, where he'll become invincible for a long period of time, and you won't be able to do anything about it. The idea behind this entire fight is to avoid Hades' DM. So my trick to avoid it is I throw a Fabra at the very start, and I see where he's going. If he goes towards the leg, then I just let him go, but if he's going away from the leg, then I have to poke him a couple of times until his pattern is going to go towards one of the legs. And now I'm ready to go, so I can just go and spam Fabricadabra on him. Now this went a little bit differently than I anticipated. He froze Hades, or Ice Colossus froze Hades with the Ice Breath, which I thought is kind of a cool, cute mechanic that he can do. So I had to kill Hades individually, avoid Ice Colossus's attack, and then take him out. So I used Ignite to do a little bit of extra damage, and then Spellweaver Finishered him to death. So it was a good fight, but slightly unoptimal. I would have preferred a better fight, but there's not much you can't really force Hades to go back to the leg the first time. You kind of just have to deal with what you got. So if anything, I would have liked maybe a better Zack fight and a better Hades Ice Colossus fight, but both were like perfectly fine. I didn't get DM'd or anything, so I didn't have a major time loss. So now we're headed to the last world out of this trio that we haven't finished yet, which is Deep Space, and all we have to do here is defeat Gantu. Now, what we've been missing for maybe like the past half hour is Sliding Dash. We didn't really have enough deck space for it, so that's why we haven't been using it for movement, but now it kind of makes a return at the very end of the run. So you'll be seeing Sliding Dash use here. This is an anti-gravity room that we need to use to get all the way to the very top so that we can get to the room where Gantu is. So I slide and dash at the very start, get to the anti-gravity machine, and then just hop up these little platforms right here. And then there's this big gap right here at the end that I use slide and dash to get across for. And then I preset Poison. Gantu is immune to Ignite, but he is not immune to Poison. So that extra poison is specifically for Gontu to help out a little bit. If you're lucky, then all you have to do is use poison and 2 Spellweaver finishers, and that'll be enough. Unfortunately, I wasn't as lucky in this fight. I got I got unlucky. Stitch is also part of this fight, and his lasers can also heavily contribute to Gontu dying quickly. So right here I poisoned, then Fabra. He shoots at the very start, so this is completely safe. Stitch is shooting lasers right now, so he actually is doing some good damage. Here I kind of guard because I anticipate a move, but I anticipated it wrong. And he's at pretty decent damage right here. Unfortunately, he charges away from Spellweaver, so I have to end up using another Spellweaver finisher just to finish him off, which takes a little bit of extra time. So like I said, not quite as optimal as I want it to be, but it was still pretty fast. The problem is, in a 1 hour category, these small time losses are adding up very quickly. So I'm having very solid endgame fights, but they couldn't be as solid as they aren't as solid as they could potentially be. They aren't perfect, I guess. So doing those 3 worlds will give us access to Neverland, which is a pretty quick world, especially now that we have Fabricadabra and Ignite. Really all it is a bunch of movement. There are no forced fights at all in Neverland. It's just a bunch of movement and then a boss at the very end. Alright, so here at the very start we just cartwheel, and we kind of save sliding dash until we have it ready to load. And then we sliding dash in this next room right here. It's just kind of there's not really a perfect spot to use it. If we used it right here for an action roll, then it would be, it wouldn't reload in time for the next action roll that we're going to do later, so we just use it as early as we can. I think that the story idea behind Neverland is that there is a treasure that they're after, and they just end up going in a gigantic circle around the island, and then they end up fighting, and then Aqua ends up fighting a boss. So that's why we end up just running around the entire world. So right here, I get past these enemies, make sure I'm not auto-targeted onto them, and then sliding dash into that batch of enemies for the action roll. So during this section right here, we have to do some vertical movement with these orbs that push us up. There are some neat little tricks that you can do to make this as optimal as possible. Especially one room coming up in a second. So right here I take a couple steps extra forward to hit those 2 orbs in a row, and then I do a Keyblade swing at the very top so that you don't have to hang in the air for as long. You just stop your vertical movement. You do the high jump right there to avoid those platforms, and then right here you use the orb and then sliding dash to avoid those that extra orb back there. I dodge roll into that orb to get across the gap, and then use that orb to get across the gap. And then there are 3 orbs in a row right here. I get 2 in a row at the end. You can hit all 3 in a row, as Adam Timothy shows in a video, but it's incredibly hard to set up, and I prefer to just go for the guaranteed 2 in a row, so I don't really have to worry about setting it up. Maybe in the future I'll learn how to do all 3. So that's all the movement for the world. Now we get straight to the boss. Right here I do a quick menu change. I take off some ice cream as well as the poison for Ignite. We're going to be needing a lot of Ignite spam on this boss. And we only need one Fabra, or what is it? We only need one Spellweaver finisher. So each ice cream slot that you equip gives you 3, and 2 is enough for a Spellweaver finisher. So that's why we only need 1 slot here. Now the way that Vanitas 2 works is that once you land 10 hits on him without him teleporting out, he will go into this dive move. What you're after is that dive move because he won't teleport out of Spellweaver, and you'll get guaranteed max damage out of it. And you have to do it that way because at this point, Vanitas 2 is not weak to Magnet, so that isn't the guaranteed way to make sure he doesn't teleport out. You have to wait for the dive. So right here, I'm just using Ignite, and I'm kind of counting my my hits, and I'm also making sure that the Ignites do enough damage so that his HP is low enough when I actually go for the dive. So I believe I'm at maybe 5, or no, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I got really fortunate at the end. I nailed 4 in a row without him teleporting out. And right here, what I do is I move while I use Spellweaver. And he's taking damage while he's underground. This avoids having to worry about the random chance of him diving once, twice, or 3 times. You just get the guaranteed full damage out of Spellweaver, and you don't have to worry about the potential 1 dive, which would make you do a lot less damage. And there I was unable to skip a cutscene 3 times. Skipping cutscenes is actually a lot harder than it looks in this game. It's really easy to do in other games, but for some reason there's actually added delay in Birth by Sleep, so skipping cutscenes is actually quite the skill. I should also mention that we haven't really changed Keyblades at all throughout the entire run. We don't have to, because level 1 does not have to... on level 1, switching Keyblades does not actually alter your damage in any way. If anything, it's slight... For some reason, with Adam Timothy Zero, in his case, in one of his saves where he was doing a Mirage Arena RTA, it actually did... Changing Keyblades somehow did alter the damage, because before he was doing chip damage, and then he changed his Keyblade, and then he was doing good damage, and then he reset his console, and then he was doing good damage. So for some reason, the programming was just really bugged. So right here, Neverland is completely done, and all we have to do now is kind of go to certain areas, take care of story elements, progress the plot, and then we'll go to the last world of the game. All we actually have left to do is 2 bosses and 1 room, which you have to do some very precise movement through. I think at this point, this is the most amount of cutscenes that you actually have to skip. I think there are 5 cutscenes after defeating Vanitas 2 that you have to go through, and then 2 cutscenes here, and then you get a couple of things, some new D-links, and then 1 cutscene when you land in Keyblade Graveyard, the last world, and then you're actually able to control your character again. Oh, I forgot to mention D-links. D-links act as summons in this game. They aren't really used because of their horrendous loading in the PS3 version. Blu-ray disc and the Blu-ray player and a 20 gigabyte disc kind of doesn't really help with that. We were kind of hoping that they would give us install data, so that wouldn't be an issue, but you can't really ask much from Square Enix these days. So here we are in the final world, Keyblade Graveyard. So we have to do some very precise movement in this next room coming up. Basically, there are tornadoes strewn about this area, and they home in on you, and if you get caught by the tornado, you have to fight a bunch of waves of enemies with a weird little status effect. Either everything is slowed down, sped up, you're either tiny, or other odd effects. What you do to avoid this is you actually cartwheel really, really close to the tornadoes, and you kind of, you kind of thread the needle as you go straight through this little line right here, past these tornadoes. When you're being homed in by a tornado and then you move closer to another tornado, the other tornado kind of ignores you. So you just do that until you get to the last tornado, and then you just move as quickly as possible to the exit, and you get to avoid them all. So this is the final rest area, or final save area. I use my last sliding dash, and then I do my final menu. All I really need is a couple Fabras right here, because I'm going for extremely gutsy strats. I kind of blanked on my menuing right there. I get rid of the last ignite and last sliding dash that I need for cures, and I have 2 ignites that I need for final Vanitas, the final boss, and I have my 2 Fabras. Like I said, I'm going for extremely gutsy strats because, well, yeah, as I mentioned earlier, D-Links have horrendous loading, and they also, for the most part, just have bad finishers and command decks. Except for one. One in particular does insane damage as soon as you get it, and we just got it recently. It's the Peter Pan D-Link, which we're going to be using right now against Break. So at the very start, Braig is going to charge me, and I'm going to just deflect it to get him out of it as quickly as possible, because I want him to start his I guess, pattern. Braig's pattern is very, very fixed. He goes through a ground section, and then that, and then he shoots a laser, and then he goes through an aerial section, and then a charge, and then he does a kind of charge move, I guess, like a pre-DM and then a DM. So right here, I'm going into Peter Pan, and I need to fill up his gauge as quickly as possible. So I wait for when I'm able to use aerial attacks. Aerial attacks fill up the gauge as quickly as possible. I use sliding dash in case he teleports. It's kind of my safety. And then I wait for him to spawn in the middle, and I do this. I was being a little bit gutsy because his HP was just at the right point to be able to use Peter Pan there to annihilate him. But I was able to kind of get away with it. It was a very fast fight. And now, here we are at the final boss. Now, Final Vanitas acts pretty similarly to Vanitas 2, in that after 5 hits on him, or actually not 5 hits, after he does 5 moves, he will dive, and he will dive 3 times guaranteed. So my strat here, I actually kind of get caught off guard by this. I want to go into Fabra, and I want to guard, but I actually instead go straight into Mickey's reaction command, which I don't really want to do, but it's okay because it blows through 4 of his moves, and that's the 5th one. So now he's immediately going to go into that. He did it so quickly that I thought I wasn't really going to get the full damage, but I ended up getting it anyway. And right there, I just kind of take the hit and cure to be as safe as possible. I want to get to Fabras as quickly as possible so that I can poke him some more, make him do 5 more hit attacks, and make him dive again. And he dives again. Really, really good. Now right here what I'm doing is I'm doing the same thing that I did to Vanitas 2, is I kind of drag him along and do full damage, and then I cartwheel out of the way so that while he's in this delayed section, I get to Fabra as quickly as possible. And then he ends up being in the middle. That's a DM that he's supposed to be doing a lot earlier. But because I delayed it by making him do moves so quickly, he did it at the very end. So he was just a sitting duck while I was able to Fabra him to death. And that's the end of the speedrun. I'm pretty sure the speedrun actually clocked in at a time of 1:08:16 on live split. But when I looked at it via the time code, it was a 1:15:29, I think, in frames per second, and it was in 30 frames per second. So it is technically a 1:08:15, but I don't really care too much about that for now. 1:08:16 is a really sick time. It's not the most optimal time in the world, and it isn't a perfect time. There are obvious improvements here and there, but for now, it's a really solid run. I wanted to see if I could go for possibly 107, which I think would be absolutely insane if I struck that. But 108.16 is good enough for now. I think I'm going to be taking a break from this category for a while now. Not sure really what I'm going to work on now. But yeah, that's my speedrun. I hope you enjoyed. I hope more people get interested in this category because it really is a very optimal, fast-paced category. And the EXP0 mechanic makes it really, really interesting and open to a bunch of ideas. So, yeah, that's all from me. I hope you guys enjoyed the speedrun, and I'm out of here.